Good evening, everyone. It's Kim from the Pennington Public Library. Tonight, I'm joined by local filmmakers Luke Momo and Harrison Kraft to talk about their filmmaking process and to provide some insight into their film Capsules. Capsules is about four chem students who experiment with a mysterious substance and find themselves addicted in the worst way possible. They'll literally die unless they take more. If you have any questions during the program, please write them into the Q&A section. Now, some background from both of our guests. Born in Princeton, New Jersey, Luke Momo earned his undergraduate degree in philosophy with a minor in visual arts from Fordham College Lincoln Center in the class of 2019. As a student, he founded the Fordham Filmmaking Club. As a filmmaker, he directed Capsules, a feature film alongside a series of short films, including The Stamp Collector. He also interned for Marie-Louise Khondji at the Cinema Club, a dynamic online cinema space. Harrison Kraft is a director and cinematographer specializing in independent films. As a director, his credits include the short films Drug Rider and The Howling Wind. As a cinematographer, he has shot several independent films, most notably Cannibal Mukbang and Capsules. Good evening, Luke and Harrison. Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad both of you can join me tonight.
Good evening, Kim.
Yes.
I think we're locked out of video. Oh wait, there it goes.
Yes. My mouse finger is not as fast as I want it to be, but
No problem.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining me, both of you. I've known Luke, how long? For dozen years now, at least?
Years.
10 years?
I think like 10 years. I was a volunteer at the Pennington Public Library, I think in the summer of 14 or 13, thereabouts. So that's around.
Time flies.
Yeah.
Yes, and Harrison, you are a mutual friend of Luke's from a while back too, right?
That's right. Yeah, we both were friends with a guy named Charlie, and that's actually how I met Luke.
Yeah, and Charlie was a volunteer at the Pennington Public Library as well, so we have a lot of local connections.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah. Could both of you tell us a little bit about how you started in filmmaking? I don't know, maybe one of you want to go first, like how did you end up on this road that has led you here to become filmmakers?
I'll start. I believe I attribute my ability to practice and work in the craft of filmmaking due to a lot of the digital technology that was available to us in our generation. So when we were young, we had like camcorders, and then when the iPhone came along, you could produce, edit, and like kind of create whole movies on these little devices, these kind of magic devices. And that's kind of, for me, the fact that we were able to do that and it was so readily available. I attribute that a lot to how I was able to quite literally start, quote unquote, making films.
That is interesting. Yeah, so the technical side more of it, but that's great that we have that ability.
And then for me, I remember I was a pretty young kid, and my parents got these DVD players for me and my brother. And I guess of the movies we had, one of them was the original Star Wars trilogy, which I guess they squeezed onto one disc or two discs, and there were two discs in the box set. And I was young enough that I didn't really understand that a special features disc existed. So I put in that disc first, and I was like, man, what are they doing? This looks so cool, but I have no idea what it is. And it instantly got me hooked, and kind of how making films was done before I even really had a chance to see and appreciate Star Wars and other movies. Like, I started just watching all these bonus features discs, and I was like, wow, this is magical. Because like, they'd show you how they did it, then they'd show you what they did, and I was like, whoa, so now I know how they did it and what the result is. And I remember that wonder very early on as a kid, like, wow, that, like, I want to do that. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Wow, that's so interesting. I every so often I was talking to my partner about the days before they had special features readily available, and um, now I'm sure many of you have watched older films where you can't help but wonder how was that made. The very old black and white films, or the ones that are silent films, and we're so spoiled now with all the special features disc, right?
That's it.
That's right. And especially with YouTube now too, you can just look up, like, people just post the special features online. Like, I just watched one for Oppenheimer that was like an hour and a half long the other night, and I was like, this is such that I could just go on the internet, watch this. I was just blown away.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because that definitely is a mark of someone who's meant to be a filmmaker, though. Because I know many people who get very annoyed, on the other hand, of watching special features because they just don't want the magic spoiled for them whatsoever. I know several people like that. They're like, no, I just want to keep the magic. Don't want to know what's behind it. So that's why we have you guys, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, um, could you tell me what the initial spark was for the idea that led to the creation of Capsules in particular?
Yeah. So I answered this question multiple different ways. And I think the core root of the idea, I had written it in a notebook of mine probably like 5 years ago in 2018. And that year I read Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. And I endeavored upon trying to create a AI, artificial intelligence, science fiction film that combined the moral crises and psychological dilemmas that you would find in that kind of fiction, like in Dostoevsky's fiction, with science fiction tropes and genre elements. And I tried to blend these two genres together. So I began writing with different writers' versions of that story. I made a short film about it. That's the one that was in my biography, The Stamp Collector. And I never made that into a full film. But as I was writing that, I came across this project, Capsules, and it did sort of stem out of that project, The Stamp Collector, this other project, really, because what I had written in my notebook was something about a group of students and young students struggling to find their place in the world and wanting to talk about themes of addiction, substance use, and abuse. And I was able to kind of meld and use the intrigue, or sorry, my interest in psychological intrigue and that kind of characterization with science fiction elements, but it was just a different thing. And that different thing is Capsules. So when hopefully I can get my artificial intelligence movie made, which when I started it 5 years ago, it wasn't as much of a big deal. There wasn't Chat GPT, or it wasn't something that was spoken really about in either like the mainstream press or like in word of mouth and conversations people have. So hopefully when I have that done, you'll see Capsules as like a bit of its own kind of like complementary piece to that, or to my attempt to kind of create stories in that way. So that truly is the literary or artistic and kind of personal idea of what to put in there. And from a personal standpoint, I had friends who after university would go to AA, and I'd hear kind of sort of what that was like. And I had always been kind of the most sober person I had known in university, but it was a very kind of bacchanalian experience, kind of thing. And I kind of, when I made this film, I was thinking about a lot of those memories and kind of blending that with my imagination and sort of putting that all together into a film. So that is kind of my answer to that. That is my answer to your question of what happened with the
All
story.
right. All right. And how did you pitch this to Harrison, and how did you bring Harrison on board?
That might be a good one to get from Harrison.
Yeah, Harrison, do you remember when Luke
Remember-
pitched this idea for this film for you? And
I
where you
I
were at?
remember I think I was at my grandma's house, and I think Luke said, "Hey, I have a movie and it's going to be a feature film, and I want you to read it." And I read it, and we talked, and I think like how long was it before we actually went into production? Like it was a pretty short window. We didn't have that much pre-production time, did we?
And you know, I think I talked to you about it in probably November of 21 or October or November of 21, and then we shot in February of 22. So it was all very brief.
Yeah, and I remember like we Luke told me it was going to be very small from the beginning. Like he told me like it's probably going to be you, me, and the sound guy, and that's it. Like and the actors. So I knew that it was going to be tiny and fast, and it was going to be a pretty tight shoot going into it. But I that was my first feature film. I was so up for the challenge, you know. Up till that point, I really had only done shorts and kind of slightly longer short films. I think the longest one I had done at that point was probably like a 28 or a 30-minute film. And this jumped up to that 70-minute, it's at about 70, I think. So it was definitely different. But what was interesting is that like I had done films before this that had shot for give or take like 6 days, and I think we shot this in what, 8 days. So
Yeah.
this was a 70-minute film that we shot in eight
Wow.
days, but I've done like films that are 10 minutes that we shot over the course of like 6 days. So that gives you a sense of like how tight this shoot was.
Wow. I did not realize. I knew it was a short uh process, but I had no idea how tight the filming process was. So how long did it take from, I guess, beginning of filming to editing to the end of the final cut?
So beginning of filming was January 30th, 2022. The cut was locked June 26th of 2022. I haven't done the math on the days, but that's basically February, March, April, May, June, July, or no, June. It's like 6 months. I think it's
Wow.
6 months. Yeah, it was 6 months. And it was like Fury. That really was the idea. You just try and solve the problems like Fury, you know. You really throw out whatever remove anything that's extemporaneous or extraneous, not needed, and just kind of really focus on the key the essences. And I had made enough short films that I thought I had a decent sense of kind of what that was, and so I kind of went with that. We went with that.
Okay, so
Listen, I have
this
one
is
quick note. Oh,
yeah. Go ahead.
I have a quick note. I wanted to touch back on the question that Kim had asked Harrison about his interaction with me pitching the story to him in the script. And it was a great memory I have, and it's a compliment to Harrison. And what it was what I vividly remember is I'd sent Harrison the script. He read it. He liked it, but he foresaw, him and some other cast members did too. I have an email from the lead, Caroline Shriver, where she pretty much articulated the same things that Harrison outlined, which were there's some certain kind of dissonances and kind of plot holes and sort of kind of what you'd consider narrative missteps in the later half of the film. And Harrison caught all of these things and let me and the writer know about them before we made the movie. But to our regret, we were like, no, don't worry about it. We'll just shoot. We're going to make the script without making any changes to it. And that was, in many ways, if you read the reviews of the film and people who are like the critical aspect of it, it's just interesting. There were voices in the room who more sober minds. There are more sober minds, which did not, in this case, did not prevail, but were nonetheless very, in retrospect, it's a great compliment to Harrison's ability to interpret stories and understand his kind of gut sense for what makes a movie truly great, which is something we both talk about. And that's always what you're aiming for, of like when you're evaluating, something you're working on, you're trying to get it to that level. And we did the best we could to make Capsules that. Harrison definitely did that. And for me, that's one of the things as I look back at the project, I'm like, did I really, because I'm one of the writers on the film, I wonder, like, did I really do everything possible to get it to that level? But anyways.
Oh, you're getting ahead, Luke. You're getting ahead of us. You're getting ahead of us.
Sorry. I just wanted to.
There's more questions in this interview, Luke.
All right.
No, I'm just kidding.
The thing is, I knew once I booked both of you that I would have no problem filling up the airtime. At least from Luke's end, I knew. Oh my goodness. Well, so the film has such a very distinctive feel and look to it, just the colors, the contrast in it. I know, Luke, when you told me, oh yeah, check out my latest film, and through the years you've sent me a number of your shorts and said, yeah, Kim, check out my latest film, and I was really blown away about the production quality and the feel and the look of this one. So how did both of you work together to get that visual look? And you started with your iPhones, what first inspired you, and your making of videos. So how did you get from that, your inspirations, to now this high quality look of this film?
I'd love to defer to Harrison to talk a little bit about his skill do you think your skill is somewhat innate, Harrison? Like I kind of wonder, like, is your ability, like where you place the camera and those things on set, like do you feel like you need to, like, you have a muscle that you like train and like have to look at movies and look at like paintings and compositions to like keep yourself afloat? Or do you think like you could wake up 10 years from now and still like
I ask myself that every day. Like I get really terrified that, like, if I were to lose my vision tomorrow, like, or like if something shot out one of my eyes, would I still be able to do what I do? And the truth is, I don't know. I mean, I think it's something that you have to feel, right? But Luke, you and I talked from the beginning about making this. I remember you gave me a lot of references. The most notable one I can remember was Clute and Upstream Color, and those are two darker movies that are lit very, like, they're motivated by practical lights in the frame, like an overhead lamp, or just whatever is kind of there. It doesn't look stagey, right? And I think that was the idea with Capsules, is we didn't want to make something that looked like it was lit up on a sound stage. We didn't want the actors to fall into perfect light. And I think that comes across for the most part. I think it looks like kind of gritty and real for the most part. And I remember you said you wanted it in a widescreen aspect ratio, and I think we worked with that. Like, we had this bigger Airbnb that we were shooting, and it was kind of one big room, and that was actually something I really appreciated about it. I'm glad it wasn't broken up into a bunch of tinier rooms, because I think that would have made it extremely hard to photograph, especially in a short amount of time. We didn't have to keep relighting different rooms. We were able to move the light to the other side of the room, kind of rearrange, to have that many lights to begin with. We were kind of very minimalist, and we're lucky that cameras these days are so small and adaptable, and they're all very high sensitivity. So we're able to shoot with not as much light as you would typically need if you were to shoot on film, or even 10 years ago on a digital camera. They've gotten a bit better than that. So we were lucky. But I think, when it came to crafting the look, going back to the references like Clute and Upstream Color, they're both very dark, right? And I think we were able to maintain that with also just smart blocking. I think we were able to keep the characters lit enough so that you know who's talking when. I think that's what's important in a movie. It's never confusing who's talking or where they're looking. And I think that's where composition, framing, and blocking all come and marry each other, right?
Right. You may need to define blocking if we have any neophyte members.
Sure. So blocking is pretty much just where the characters are placed in relation to the camera inside of the scene. So and how they are in relation to each other spatially. So if you have one character right here, they'd be talking to me like this. That means the camera could shoot them from over my shoulder this way and over their shoulder this way. And it's your job to decide where those people have to go inside the scene in order to maintain that eye contact, or where they're talking, that spatial awareness for the audience. So
Right. There was a funny
Harrison,
moment.
yeah, Luke, go ahead.
There was a funny moment in the movie when it's the scene where Ricky, the drug dealer, shows up, and the characters Ryan and Maya kind of run to the kitchenette to confront Ricky as he's knocking on the door, and they kind of accost him. They tell him like, "Why are you here?" All these things. And we were shooting that scene, and like we were so close to the wall there. Harrison and I were like, how I like turned to Harrison, was like, Harrison, I have no clue how you're gonna light this. Like, this is like, it's almost like shooting like someone's like, not home movie, but like their audition tape in their apartment, because you're just like right on top of them, and like there's just a white wall behind them. It was, we weren't in the Sahara Desert or anything. Like, that was not the most cinematic location. But Harrison is able to take those small kind of things and make them work. So things that are incredibly ordinary and still give them that cinematic feeling, which is an incredible talent. And you see it in the film, in every moment of the film.
Wow, Luke, you see, you're predicting my questions, because I was going to ask you what you found to be the most challenging or rewarding scene to shoot, and that sounded like a challenging scene example.
Yeah, well, it's funny. You got to give me a second to think about it, because that may not be the most challenging one. I think the most challenging one was we had a tough time. We shot the first scene of the movie that we shot was we call it the dissection scene. And it's kind of the quote unquote show-stopping moment of the movie, where the students are, they've kidnapped I'm going to go with some spoilers here, I guess, and we're just assuming people have seen the movie. They kidnapped the old man who has originally had the vial of pills, and they, in order to learn more about who he is after they've knocked him out, knocked him unconscious, and he's seemingly not waking up, they dissect him. And this scene is seemingly so like kind of over the top and all these things. And we decided to shoot that first on the very first day. So that was like jumping into like the deep end of a pool, like off like a 10-story high dive. And we did not storyboard that sequence, which typically directors and who are making movies would kind of storyboard an action sequence, which is they would draw the frames roughly of like, okay, so you'll get shot 1, 2, 3, and then you combine that all into a sequence. We did not do that. We just shot it like it was a documentary, and the camera was there, and they had this incredible prop made by this very talented effects team. Yeah, we just kind of went with it, and that I think that was the most challenging moment of the movie, the first day, because everyone was new, people didn't know each other, and we were doing this really over the top scene, and that was it.
You were trying to test everyone as a team bonding building experience, weren't you?
I had heard that. I forget in what film biography what biographical thing about films where they had said that they had done the hardest scenes first, and that always stuck with me. So when I scheduled the movie, I was thinking, why don't I just try and put it first? And like, if we can't get over this, then how is the rest of the weekend? And it bonds people. That it does.
I just watched another behind the scenes making of special features, but it was for Blade Runner. And I didn't realize how much of a nightmare that shoot actually was. Like I knew that it must have been tough, but it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like it was a true nightmare. Like everyone was getting sick and they were using like bug fogger smoke, and like it was like mosquito repellent to like make it smoky, and the rain, like apparently like it was smelling like rotten fish during the shoot. And like the first thing they were shooting was the Tyrell headquarters sequence where Deckard goes and he's like interviewing Rachel. That was like the first thing they were shooting, and apparently like everything went wrong on the shooting. Like the columns that are in that giant space were like upside down or something, and they had to delay shooting by 5 days just to flip the columns back over or something.
That's wild.
Wow. So Harrison, what was your memory of this first shoot with this? I would call it like open chest surgery.
I think the thing for me about that scene was I was very concerned about the chest looking real, right? And that's of no discredit to the makeup artists or the people that did the special effects. It was a very good model. I was just worried that it didn't look like it belonged to the old man very much. Like it was a lot girthier than him, and we had to make his head look like it was somehow a part of this thicker torso. And I was like, oh man, how are we going to line this up in a way that people are going to believe that that's really his chest and his like stomach? And I was actually very happy with how it all came together in the end. That was surprising to me, that we were able to light it in a way that worked so well. And I think the way we lit it is I think we kind of took the Clute option, right? Like we had this overhanging kind of medical-ish light, and then we just kind of motivated a spotlight right down into the chest, and we were like, well, that's probably the only light that's on in the room, right? It's kind of how we played it.
Right. And it gives that stark feeling.
Right. And was that the question? I feel like maybe I didn't answer the question.
Oh, no worries. Questions are just supposed to spur on talk, so no problem. I think you got it.
Okay.
You did.
So Luke, was this chest something that, did you happen upon this makeup artist and this idea? How was this surgery something that was part of your idea from the get-go? It just seemed to me when I was watching the film, it was very, like you said, it was very impactful, very surprising. I didn't expect the students to go there.
Right. And most people don't. For good reason. Because you kind of wonder, you're like, why wouldn't they wait until he wakes up to try and talk to him again? So there are some kind of cognitive dissonances in there that you would have when you're watching it, which are completely legitimate. That's a great question. Where did this come from? And I'll try and answer it the best I can. And it'll probably sound a little stream of conscious like some of my other responses, but I'll try and keep it concise. When I was writing that AI movie for years, I always had a scene where the man who had worked with the AI had implanted himself with technologies inside of his body. So it was a writing idea that existed in this project we had been writing, me and the writers Davis Brown and Tommy Cunningham. And if you see my other short film, The Stamp Collector, there's a scene where he has a computer chip underneath kind of like this part of his hand, and he removes it. So it's kind of this thing of going under the skin and getting some of that kind of really gruesome feeling across for the audience and giving them that moment. I'm trying to remember now why I was interested in that. I think it's just in the most basic way, something that we all feel, and it emotionally connects us to what we're seeing on the screen when, you know, our bodies are at risk. My mom knows well, I was born from a C-section, and just this Thanksgiving, she told the kind of disgusting story of my birth.
Great Thanksgiving story, it sounds like.
Exactly. My
Dinner
mom,
table
like,
discussion.
yeah, the whole dinner table was like, that was the dinner table discussion. And I don't know, just for some reason it always was relevant. So it kind of came around, and I was sitting in, when I wrote Capsules with Davis Brown, we were thinking his dad was also is a doctor, and I don't know how many surgeries he's done, but it was just something I think that just came up and was in our mind, and in the desire of what we wanted to put on screen. So it just kind of manifested, I think, from that. And then executing it, I was just lucky. I came across Ashley Thomas, and she is the makeup artist. Her company, Yellow Moth Makeup, she's been doing work for like TV shows like New Amsterdam. She does, whenever they have surgery scenes on like the TV shows for like hospital dramas and things, she'll do the chess pieces and things like that. And I just was able to network with and meet her. She also had credits on some of my favorite films, Good Time by the Safdie brothers. She had done work that unfortunately got cut, but ended up on kind of different music videos and things that they had used from that film. So I was a big fan of her. I was able to kind of find her work, see that she had an incredible amount of talent, and would it be able to believably build like Harrison said, make something that was realistic for such a extreme scene. And overall, very pleased with the results of it. You still feel the narrative dissonance in that scene. It's like, why? Like, is this really what they would do? But from a visual standpoint, it really comes together nicely.
It's certainly unforgettable. I could tell you both that, and and
Yeah, I think you remember that.
it did look very impressive. Would you say that was one of the most creative risk you took in the film, or are there other parts of the film that you find were big creative risk for you, for both of you? I mean, this is your first feature film, so I guess,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it is, and I would just connect it to the screenplay and the idea that Davis and I had written kind of, you know, the furious first draft of this script in 2 weeks, and then rewrote it over the course of 2 months. I think that to me felt like in retrospect, felt like the biggest risk of just producing something that was so raw and so kind of off the cuff. That definitely was the biggest risk, because people were wondering, you know, as we were shooting it, like, is this really the way it should go or not? And we would just keep pushing people, yes, yes, yes. And it, as a result, it has that kind of raw, kind of edgy, risky quality to it. So that was it. It was the script, the material.
Harrison,
I
what
wonder
about
for Harrison.
yeah, Harrison, what about you, in terms of what were some of the risks you took in shooting this film?
In terms of the risks, I mean, Luke actually encouraged me to take every risk. He's like, if there's something you think is kind of risky, I want you to do it. Like, that was his direction to me. He's like, I don't care if you think it's a bad idea. I just want us to take a bunch of risks. Like, if there's anything that you think, and I think one of them was, there's a scene where one of the characters smokes some pot that the other three main characters give to him, and it's a part where, like, you know, you're seeing what he's seeing, and I don't know if anyone else on set got it at the time, but I lit them from underneath, and I put this crazy fisheye lens on the camera, and I basically told them, like, do it like it's Macbeth, do it like you're the three witches in Macbeth. And they're like, what are you talking about? And then in the final film, I think it comes across kind of maybe a little bit, but I think that was probably the biggest creative risk I took.
Right. And the talent, yeah, they don't look glamorous there whatsoever.
I I remember that scene and thinking, this is a reference to something. But Harrison, now it makes sense. Yes, I can see that. It's one of those scenes where you recognize it's familiar. So you did succeed, I think, in referencing something very familiar, but because you're watching what you're watching, I think it takes a while there's no context whatsoever at first. But yeah, I see it now.
Cool.
We have Meredith who says hi from Pennington. She says she loved the film. She said such high quality and fun to see local backdrops. She said the story is very focused, and she's wondering if growing up in New Jersey shaped both of you at all as filmmakers.
It certainly has. That's a great question. Thank you so much, Meredith. We really appreciate it, and I'm happy you got to see Delaware Ave there in the film. You probably recognize Pennington. Wow, I really need to think about it. I've never been asked this question, how my connection to the state and filmmaking. What I would say is, I feel like we grew up in a time where movie going in the theater was happening. And it was happening as kind of, it had a gold standard feeling to it. So I have so many great memories of going to the AMC Hamilton 24, which is now closed, what was formerly the Market Fair Theater. I forget, I guess it was a Regal, the independent, more independent theaters, Princeton Garden Theater and Montgomery Cinemas. And just like throughout the years, as growing up, being able to watch different films and enjoy them. I guess that pretty much would be something that in New Jersey here, and that's an American thing, really. And probably even, it's definitely beyond American. But we did have access to that here. Our library, I mean, just even our library, like our libraries had incredible Blu-ray and DVD collections that I could, freely rent. So when I was a volunteer at the library 10 years ago, I found Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life in that Pennington Public Library. And that completely changed my view of filmmaking. So access to public libraries was completely invaluable, and I'm so grateful for. So, I mean, it's countless. It really is countless. I thank you so much for asking the question. I'll think about it and try and come up with a more succinct response next time. I'll put myself off there.
I did not pay Luke to say that about the library, by the way.
You did not. Yeah, I don't think I've ever even told you that story, Ken. Yeah.
No, you didn't. You didn't.
Yeah.
We did talk a lot about film over the years that you volunteered. But no, you didn't mention that.
Yeah.
So, Harrison, what about you?
I don't think I realized it happening. Growing up in New Jersey, I've moved around a lot in my life, but it was always kind of within New Jersey and kind of the Spring Valley, Rockland County, New York area. So, if you grow up in North Jersey like that, there's certain things that you kind of take for granted because, you're around New York State. You could go to Virginia, Pennsylvania, and they kind of all look generally the same. But it wasn't until I was probably 18 when I made the film, but I made a film called Clack back in 2018. And I remember I made it in a part of New Jersey that I grew up, kind of spent my adolescence. And a couple of my friends that I met later on in life, ironically, even though they lived literally like maybe 200 feet from where I shot the movie, I didn't realize like what an insane impact it had on them. They're two brothers, and they've acted in a lot of my movies since. But they say that that's honestly one of the most spiritual films they've ever seen because it was in a place where they grew up, and it took it to this new height that they'd been observing ever since they were babies, essentially. up till a point where they had to leave once they became adults. So I think that the things that we make in our films are essentially, they serve us a couple purposes, but number one, and the biggest one for me, is that they're time capsules. Capsules. Capsules is now a time capsule for me, and I'm sure it is for Luke. It's where he spent his youth. He saw places that he's been seeing his whole life, and now it's like burned into a film forever. So it's something that you can always look back on, and I think it's what we make. I think it shapes us later on. Honestly, I think we get influence from what surrounds us, but I think from what we make, we realize later.
Right. Yeah,
Wow.
you don't even realize at the time. Can I add one last little addendum to that? I remember walking home from like dances in my high school years and having very similar emotions to some of the things that are in Capsules. And it took me to make that movie and then see it kind of in retrospect. And then I was like, wow, that kind of reminds me of parts of my high school self and certain things, so it's like, I hear what Harrison's saying about kind of those aspects, they kind of hit you in different waves over time.
Wow. Can you tell us some more about the locations in the film? Yes, you have Pennington. Some of the locations, like the one where the characters end up driving to, that's beautiful, just so cinematic location. Of course, we have the end credits too. The scene at the end, the very end. So yeah.
Luke, I actually took my family there the other day. I didn't realize it until it was happening because we went out for
Hemlock Falls.
lunch. Yeah,
No way.
and we went out to Hemlock Falls, and I'm like, oh my God, no way. And I actually took a picture. I'm going to text it to you right now. I forgot to send it to you.
Was it an accident? It was an accident that you ended up there?
Total accident. Like I didn't, because we were grabbing lunch in Maplewood, New Jersey. I'm like, there's got to be somewhere to hike around here. My dad's like, all right, I got somewhere. And I was like, no way. That's crazy.
Funny. Maybe your dad knew. Maybe your dad had been there before. It could be.
My dad still hasn't seen Capsules.
Ah.
Wow. Well, it could happen. It could happen.
Yeah, yeah. Maybe he has, but you don't know. So
there, I just sent you that photo. It's of the falls now.
Thank you. So the locations, the main house that the students are in, I've been told by the owner, and it's written on her website, or she had done some writings. Joyce Carol Oates, our most esteemed novelist from the area, had lived in that house for many years and loved it, and the kind of mid-century modern architectural style she has, like writings. She's written about it, and I can send it here. Yeah, so that house itself, I was able to find when I did some scouting in the area, and I was like, oh, this is perfect for a movie, because I just thought it was cool, and it would really work for what we were going for. And then the Hemlock Falls is in, I think it's near Orange, right? It's like South Orange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I found that through the kind people at the New Jersey Film Commission, who, if anyone on here is looking for like practical film tidbits, the second you're working on a film, you should try and contact the Film Commission, because they have people on the staff who will help you with your process of trying to provide you leads on locations. So I had found that Hemlock Falls simply because with their help, gratefully, and was able to call that town and negotiate, and we had to have a police officer there and all these things, which was very nice, and he was a very kind man, and he appreciated us being that day, and we were all very careful, and we weren't ever kind of close to falling over the edge and that thing. But everything besides that, some of it is like there's the woods where they look for Jasper, what we call the foothills. That was in Lambertville, on some property that my mom had owned at the time, just far back in the woods there. And then the other house, the old man's house, I had found that on Airbnb, and that house is actually, if people are familiar with the area, where the Nassau Park kind of boulevard, like that shopping mall complex is, where they used to have that Walmart that went out of business. It's right behind that, but it has a tree line kind of that protects you from sort of connecting that you're there. but that scene takes place there, and I still drive by there because I'm in the Princeton area, and I think about that scene from the movie where they break into the old man's house and that whole tragedy happens. And I'm trying to think of some of the other locations. The Strawbey Center in Pennington, who they had very kind people running that, who my mom had known over the years. My mom really, now that I think about it, my mom was quite a good location scout here. She should have had a credit. I spoke to them early on, and that's how we came up with the lab. We converted these kind of law office looking spaces into the way Harrison lit it with those strong red lights, where it kind of looks like you're on the Death Star or something like that. I think that's probably the run of most of the locations. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few things here or there, but also one of my the parking lot where they find the old man. My dad has a little parking lot up in New Jersey, in Kingston, and that's where we shot that scene. So it was a hodgepodge of different locations that we kind of summed all together into the film.
Wow, that is great. I'm wondering, oh, you didn't address the very end.
Hemlock Falls? Oh, the very end. Harrison.
After the credits, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So the very end, Luke and Davis asked me if I would play a young version of the old man in the film. And I said, sure. What do you need me to do? And they said, well, you need to run through the desert and find a rock that has like glowing green specks or something. Or I don't remember exactly how to phrase it, but I said, oh, sure. And then I was visiting my parents out in Nevada, and I found it's a I don't know if it's a park or if it's a hiking trail, but there was a place not too far from where they lived called like Shadow Canyon, and it had an access point that was in their community. So I drove up there. I went out. I'm like, you could bury a body out here and no one would ever know. So I went out there, and believe it or not, like it may look like the middle of the desert in the film, but it's really right next to it's crazy. It's right next to the edge of civilization. So like I have some drone footage that I took, and if I'm facing the camera towards where you see in the movie, it's mountains. If I turned it like degrees this way, you would just see all of Las Vegas, and I thought that was the funniest thing. So, but it was nice. My girlfriend Eliza, she actually operated camera for that scene, so she got a second unit camera credit, and she did great. I don't consider myself much of an actor, so I can't speak for myself on how I did. But all I had to do was drink some water and then find a rock.
He looks like a young Matt Damon out there. Come on.
That was another quite shocking scene, because we didn't expect it at the end there, and you did it wonderfully, Harrison. And it looked
thanks.
it looked like something from almost an alien planet. It was it was just so cinematic. So it's so funny, the movie magic, when you're saying how it's right next to civilization.
Thank you.
That's so fun. What's something about the film that might surprise people, actually, whether it's behind the scenes or any other aspect of the film?
That's a great question. I have to think about that. I've never quite. Harrison, do you have something? I'm struggling here to think of something.
I mean, what took us the longest to shoot? Like, do you remember, like, if there was something that, like, I know there was stuff that was cut from the film ultimately, but like, maybe that would actually be the most surprising thing.
There's like 10 minutes of the movie that got cut.
Yeah.
You should tell him what it is.
We'll put that a part of movie magic.
Now, when you say there's 10 minutes of the movie that was cut, are you saying that there was only 10 minutes of the movie that was cut? And you managed to keep everything else you filmed in the film? Because that would be surprising, actually. I always imagine there's more on the cutting room floor than there is.
There
I know
is.
this is, but I know this is a very small project. So
Yeah, so a lot of times they talk about like ratios with movies. So they'll say like in terms of like you're saying, the cutting room floor, like they'll have like 2 to 1. That's like the most brutal ratio, right? Where it's like you only have 2 takes for every shot. So if you have a 2 to 1 ratio and you have a 70-minute movie, that means really everything you shot was 120 minutes. But we weren't like that. With our digital camera, we had the camera running quite a bit on set. So we had about an average, I think, of like 3 or 4 takes. So we probably had 1,000 hours or something like that of footage. I've never actually done the math on what it was. But when we're saying we cut 10 minutes, what we mean is originally the movie in the screenplay, typically the math of screenplay pages to movie minutes is a 1 to 1 ratio. So if you have 1 page of a screenplay, they say that will be 1 minute in a movie. So if you have a 90-page screenplay, that will translate to a 90-minute movie. Capsules on the page was an 80-page screenplay, but the finished movie is 70 minutes, and that's including credits. So technically, we lost about 13 minutes of material. And there was more there. There was a little more quote unquote meat on the bone. But as they say, you have to kill your darlings. And a lot of times editing a movie, the sculptural aspect and the emotional, story motivating emotion and these things, you realize, wow, we can cut this monologue, entirely, and the audience will still understand that when the characters are sitting there on what could potentially be the last day of their life, looking out over that waterfall, there's an emotion there, and the characters don't need to talk there. But in the script and in what we shot, they discussed there, but that's not in the film. So that could be one of the surprises, actually. Yeah, is that there was some materials there that didn't make it into the film. I'm trying to think of another surprise though.
I had to pull the film up on Tubi, so I'm doing a quick scrub through to see like the thumbnails.
He's looking at it on the internet. You can watch it on Tubi for free if anyone here hasn't seen it yet and has made it this far into this discussion.
Oh, we let everyone know in the promos
Oh,
for
great,
this
right.
interview. Check out the film. So
I would say the surprise we're most proud of is that everyone besides Mr. Dodderer, who played the old man involved with the film, was 25 years of age or younger in the production of the film. So that's including everyone behind the camera and in front of the camera. Everyone was 25 and under. So we were really proud of that youthful feeling of the film. And I think the fact there was really no one else there kind of holding our hand or, pushing it a certain way, we're proud of them.
I had a suspicion when I saw Mr. Dodderer, the old man, and I was like, this guy's an old man?
You thought maybe he was in makeup? He was a young person in makeup?
He did not look old to me, but that's because I'm not 25 and under, probably.
His character is called the old man.
I know.
Yeah. I didn't mean to be critical.
I'm just picking on you, Luke. No, it's really
honest.
Yeah. I'm very impressed, though. Very impressed. So what's new for the both of you? Like, what's in store for the both of you? I know, Harrison, you mentioned that since the making of Capsules, you've been working on more films. Capsules has paved the way for additional film work for you. So how's that been?
It has. Yeah. Well, I guess, ever since I did Capsules, I've done a couple other films with connections via Capsules. Davis, the co-writer of this, enlisted me to shoot a film that he wrote with Ben, the guy that played Ricky So they made a film together, and I shot that for them. And then Marcus, who played I don't know why I'm blanking. Luke's muted. Hang on.
Oh,
All right. Well, anyway, Marcus is Jasper. I'm sorry. Sorry, my bad.
That's all right.
Jasper. So I shot a film for him as well. And then also, I mean, I don't know if it's through Capsules, but I did agree to shoot another feature film next summer for someone who saw Capsules and I guess went to school at Fordham with Luke. So I guess Capsules is blossoming.
yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. What about you, Luke?
I'm trying to get that AI artificial intelligence film done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
We'd be
it's
able to
another
get
feature
Harrison back
film you're
behind
thinking?
camera. Yeah, it's a feature. It's a feature. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, sounds fascinating. You have to
Yeah.
keep us apprised of, your progress.
I definitely will.
Well, you know what, Luke and
I hope
Harrison,
that
yes. Did you find something,
No, I
Harrison?
hope that answers Meredith in the comment
Oh,
section.
yeah.
She was asking also like what how do you start thinking about your next film, and what is the next step for you or your next film idea? And Luke, a question
Yeah.
for you, what is your process of marketing a film?
Oh, these are all great questions. Should we take a moment to try and answer that?
Sure, of course. Of course. Yeah, how has the marketing been for you for this film? Is this is your first feature-length film?
Yeah,
What is the process for that?
that's a great question. I believe kind of the most like macrocosmic and like big scale marketing industry example I've been telling people this summer. Um, it's miles and miles and miles away from what we did with Capsules, but it gives you an insight into the process of marketing a film. That's Meredith's question here. So when this film that's been out now and will probably win quite a few Academy Awards, Oppenheimer, made by Christopher Nolan, when he went to get that movie made with Universal, the giant motion picture studio, they negotiated, if you read in the press what's written about it, $100 million budget, which obviously is astronomical, seemingly, right? But apparently in Hollywood, that's low budget. I don't know how, $100 million. And they negotiated a matched $100 million marketing budget. So for every dollar spent on the production of Oppenheimer, there was an equal dollar spent on the marketing. And I believe that you can see there I think in that rough idea of what they're doing there, that's pretty much what you want to do when you make a movie in terms of the marketing. You want to have whatever time and budget you've spent on the film, you, in the most ideal world, would want to match that in terms of the marketing and the budget of the marketing, because you really want to get your movie, the more people who can see your movie, the better it is. So we put all the resources and time we had into marketing it. What that looked like was film festivals. So very gratefully, we were able to play at the Garden State Film Festival. We were able to, and we got a little recognition there. We were up for like the Kevin Smith Award, which that was kind of a Jersey connection, kind of fun thing to have on the resume. And we also played in the Philip K. Dick Film Festival in New York. They're a very small film festival, but they're named after and try to keep the Philip K. Dick, the writer of Blade Runners, which were the book that Blade Runner was adapted from, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. So we had a small festival run. That's a big part of it. And then when you release the film, you try to get some press to review and write about the film, which we did, which you can find online. And you also just promote it on online advertising so people can find it. And you get some viewers that way, which is pretty cool. And people who otherwise, wouldn't see the film get to see the film.
Excellent. And you're here talking about your film, so.
Thank so much the libraries for doing
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you so
Thank you.
much, both of you, for joining me tonight. And I'm excited to hear about your future projects, in the upcoming future. And we'd love to, have you guys back again with more information about, other projects you do. So thank you both. All right.
Well,
And
thank
thank
you
you,
for having us.
everyone. Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, everyone, for joining us. Everyone, have a
Happy
wonderful
Meredith.
night. Yeah. Good night.
Thank you, Kim. Have a good night.